Dazzler's Craft. Handcraft custom trainers designed in-house. From your favourite football team or player to that band you've always loved. dazzlerscraft.co.uk.
Welcome to My Best 11 podcast. Today we are joined by a man who played at his hometown club Forest, then Luton, Shrewsbury, Exeter and Peterborough. But he's probably maybe more well known for his management career. Started his time in non-league, then went to Luton, Tottenham, Leicester, back to Luton, Sheffield Wednesday, and had, from my understanding, I was speaking to a Spurs fan of mine earlier, 2 stints, I think, as caretaker. Today we are joined by a man proudly wearing his Tottenham shirt. We are joined by David Pleat. How are you, David?
I'm fine and looking forward to the conversation. I'm sure we'll have good fun.
Fantastic. How are you, Marvin?
I'm gonna say, Andrew, that for the very first time with a guest, I'm nervous, like it's a game or something. But nerves are always a good thing for me when I was playing. So
fantastic. So what we do is we go through David's best 11 players he's ever managed in his managerial career, all the way through from Nuneaton, all the way down to Tottenham. His number of times at Tottenham. Now, as he goes through, he's going to name his formation, and he's also going to then give us a few clues so you people listening at home can try and have a few guesses and see if you can guess the player David has named. So we will hand straight over to you, David, because they're not here to listen to myself or Marvin. What's your formation? What formation have you picked for this team and why?
Well, I was very lucky at Tottenham to kind of not introduce, but to work with a formation which was 4-5-1, which did amazingly well. We scored a lot of goals and we were very successful, although falling at the last hurdle in an FA Cup final. And the goalkeeper is straightforward. I'm going for a 4-3-3, which people do. I have to tell you, there are so many good players who are left out of the 11 that I feel rather embarrassed that they are missing. But it's been a real good exercise for me to try and picture an 11 for different reasons. Anyway, my first one would be the goalkeeper. And the clue on the goalkeeper is very simple. Ron Saunders wouldn't allow him to keep his club car when he left for Bedfordshire. Now, I've got to tell you, I had other great goalkeepers, 2 England goalkeepers. One was called Chris Woods at Sheffield Wednesday, and one was called Ray Clements, sadly departed now, who was at Tottenham. But the clue, once again, Ron Saunders wouldn't allow him to keep his club car when he left for Bedfordshire.
is this player, was he an international?
No.
When he left Bedfordshire.
He's a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Greatest line with big hands.
Did he play at Luton?
Of course, yes, he did.
Oh.
I'm gonna. Boy, you got it, Andrew.
I'm gonna go Les Seeley.
Nope.
Is he Scottish?
He is indeed.
It's the other one.
Jake Finley.
Yes, correct.
Jake Finley. He has been in so many teams, and I don't know whether or not Luton fans maybe don't give him the accolades he deserves. Is that something that you think could be true, David?
A very strong goalkeeper. He was big. He had presence. He commanded the goal. He was a goalkeeper I liked. He came amongst bodies. Complete contrast to Les Seeley, who I had at Luton, who was a very good line goalkeeper. Andy Dibble was also someone who came amongst bodies. But I felt that Finley had all the makings. Had he been a really dedicated professional, he had injuries, he would have had a really long career in the game. As it was, he had a very successful career. He was a great character in the dressing room. To me, he was a top goalkeeper. And I always had problems with goalkeepers. I had one or two that the American boy Casey Keller didn't do so well for me at Tottenham. I had a boy called Martin Hodge, didn't do so well for me at Leicester. I had a pressman at Sheffield Wednesday. So I had a lot of goalkeepers, but Finley's up there.
Yeah. They say he was really good with his feet, and actually in today's modern game would actually do a lot better maybe even and be appreciated a bit more. Is that something you experienced on training ground on pitches?
Well, we didn't pass the ball out so much in those days, I'll be honest with you. We didn't work from the back like they do in the modern game so much, working through the field. We tended to kick it long and we kicked it towards the left-hand side. I mean, I can remember we used to have Mick Harford pulling out wide. I mean, I had so many very good players at Luton. But yeah, Finley had a good kick. Most goalkeepers did. But I just remember him as a very brave, exceptionally good shot stopper. Just a fine goalkeeper.
Excellent.
Fantastic. So, Jake Finley's in goal. We move on. Do you want to go number 2 or number 3? Left back or right back?
We're going to the right back in a back 4, and the clue is he had fractured English, but he was the smoothest fullback I ever worked with, and he settled for Chelsea.
This is your favourite player, Andrew, I think.
I know this is, yes. I loved him. He was named in Frank Sinclair's best 11 as well, I think. Is his name Mr. Dan Petrescu of Sheffield Wednesday?
He is indeed. I have sold him under pressure, terrible pressure by his agent. Almost the fact that I was scared stiff. But anyway, the chairman conceded. And we had to sell him to Chelsea. It was a sad day. He played very, very well for Chelsea. As a wing back, he was fantastic. He had the timing, the brains. He was Romanian. He got inside the opposing fullback so brilliantly on those blindside runs. Absolutely outstanding, Dan Petrescu. We sold him to Chelsea. Problem was at Sheffield Wednesday, if he wanted to go back to Romania to play in internationals or see his family, he had to catch the bus to Manchester, the flight to Heathrow, another flight to Bucharest. And in the end, I think he got fed up of that. And I think his wife liked Harrods. He thought that he would be near Heathrow Airport. And in the end, we conceded. He went to Chelsea. Sad day for Sheffield.
I mean, Gaffer, so going back, I mean, your pun intended, agent, was his agent really quite consistent? I mean, I doubt you was scared of him, but I mean, agent, were they quite like, what's the word I'm looking for to be politically correct? Like, a lot of pressure on you.
Lost your sound. Yes.
So was it more the case of an ultimatum, like, you know, if you don't get him a move,
if you don't sell him, he's not going to play in the team. The consequences of challenging this rather guy, he went to prison eventually, Bacali, you can look him up. It was really a threatening situation. Yeah.
Wow. So, Dan Petrescu is right back, the Romanian right wing back. Who's going your left back, David?
The left back is a quiet Irishman signed from Lawn for £5,000 and 500 games later was sold to Manchester United for £500,000 after around 500 games. Quite remarkable. A quiet Irishman. Played in the centre of defence, but his first games for Luton were as a left back, and that's where I put him in the team.
Super Mal Donaghy.
Mal Donaghy is correct.
Yeah. What made you change his position?
Mal could play anywhere. He was a natural footballer, gifted, natural athlete. He was quick, he was strong, brave. An interesting player. Didn't want to warm up particularly before the game. Went out at 5-3 and he'd left the ground by 5 o'clock on a Saturday. He was very well respected by the other players, but in a strange way, he wasn't one of the crowd. He was very independent boy, family boy, and socially didn't mix that much with the others. But a very fine player, of course, famous for in 1982, he got sent off for Northern Ireland against Spain in a great Northern Ireland victory in Spain, 1-0, 1982 World Cup, when Armstrong got sent off for Northern Ireland. Sorry, Mal got sent off for Northern Ireland. Armstrong scored the goal. 1-0.
Fantastic. So you picked Mal. So sorry. So you picked Mal. So Mal Donaghy is in obviously there. You mentioned that he's a bit of a quiet person. In terms of when you create a team, do you want a mixture of characters, or is it a case of you want all boisterous, or do you want all quiet? What type of thing do you go for?
No, it's like everything in life. You want to balance, whether it's left footers, right footers, big guys, small guys, skillful guys, strong guys. I don't think you can go into their character too much on the actual day you sign them. You have to know a little bit about them. I went to see Donaghy in an under-23 game in Ireland. And one of the things that struck me was he got a bad injury or a real kick and he went down injured. And you know what? He didn't want the trainer on. He limped on. He limped on for the next 10 minutes and gradually got back into his stride. He was brave. He was, game came easy to Donaghy. He was a very interesting character. And obviously went to Alex rang me and I recommended him. I said, look, he won't let you down. You'll sleep easy at night with him in your club. He was mainly a sub at Man United. Then he prolonged his career even more. He had 2 years at Chelsea.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Marvin.
Yeah, I was going to say, Gaff, obviously Andrew spoke about your playing career, but I want to ask you a question. How early was it, while you were still playing, that you thought about going into coaching and obviously being on the manager side of things?
Yes, I was quite early, Marvin, because in many ways I had injuries, as you indeed yourself, and I had a bad back problem. I had a broken leg, an ankle, and my career was going, you could say, steadily downwards. Outstanding at 16, 17, 18, not maintaining that progress for all sorts of reasons, amongst them injuries. And I was playing at Peterborough. I was 28, and I got a call from Brian Clough and Peter Taylor at Forest saying there's a vacancy at Nuneaton. Would you like to take it? I said, I'm not ready to be a manager yet. I'm only 28. I was already taking my coaching certificates and enjoyed coaching, and I enjoyed leading people. I was a union representative all through my career. And I said, I'm not ready yet. And Taylor said to me, you must be joking. You'll murder it. He said, half the managers are crap. It made me feel great. So I took the job. I had 2.5 seasons there, and then Harry Haslam brought me into Luton, and I went on from there.
Okay.
Fantastic. Did you always want to be a manager, or were you thinking about coaching? Because I know you said you did your badges. Did you always want to be the person?
Yes, good point, Andrew. I was went into coaching obviously I was a player manager at Nuneaton, but when I went to Luton as a coach, I was grateful for the opportunity and didn't think of managing. But what happened was Harry Haslam got an opportunity. The coach left to go to Detroit Express with Jimmy Hill a long time ago, Roy McCrowan. Harry Haslam then got an opportunity to go to Sheffield United, and I had the coaching reins at the time with Danny Bergara, who I respected greatly. He's now passed away, poor Danny. And the opportunity, this chairman came to me and said, we'd like you to manage the club. It's very difficult for me. I remember I never ate for 2 days. All of a sudden, when you actually sit in the seat, it's completely different from being a number 2 or a coach. You have to make the final decision, and you feel the weight of the world is on your shoulders. It's not just the supporters that are looking and watching every move you make. You think the whole world's watching, and of course they're not. But it's difficult to get it into perspective. Anyway, Roy left. Danny decided to go to Sheffield United with Harry Haslam, and they gave me the reins. I lost my first game 4-0. The supporters must have been thinking, what have we done here? We've got this apprentice as manager. We should sack him. But they stuck with me, and we started to do very, very well in the 80s. Wonderful period of my life. Wonderful period.
Yes, definitely. And I'll thank you on behalf of all Luton fans right now for that moment, amongst other moments. It was probably one of the best periods in the club's history, without a doubt. In terms of sustained, it definitely was there, I think. So thank you for that, David. Centre backs.
Yeah. First centre back, headband.
We're not okay.
Let's go. Yeah, we'll go Fozzie. I mean, again, I before you speak about him, he was one who looked up to. Gaff, obviously being a young apprentice and stuff, and coming through the ranks. And it was when Andrew and I spoke, it was one of the top 3 guests I wanted to get on here because of like what he stood for me as a player and as a captain and as a leader. So it was great that we've had him on just recently, wasn't it, Andrew? Just this season we've had him on. So yeah, Steve Foster.
Well, you've encapsulated his qualities. I mean, he was a strong man, didn't train hard, didn't run too much, knew how to defend the box, tended to sit deep. But as long as the rest of the team were happy with that, and I was happy with the formation, he was completely different to a very good young centre-half I signed, Paul Elliott. Paul wanted to push out and show his speed on recovery runs, but Foster would he was like a penguin with his flapping his arms, and when he flapped his arms, it meant that whoever the fullbacks, it could have been Tim Breaker, Wayne Turner, Marquez, it means that they had to come in close to him because he wanted protection. He knew how to protect himself. He knew what he was good at. If they wanted to cross the ball, fine. I've got a chance of heading it away. He was a quiet man, Foster. Wasn't bullish. Yeah. Wasn't a big head. Knew his weight. I remember saying to him, "You're too heavy. You need to lose weight." He said, "No." He used the word gaffer. "No, gaffer. I know my best weight. Trust me." And I trusted him. And he was a very good centre half. Very good centre half.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned in terms of qualities of centre halves, do you like a balance then? You said about Elliot, you like the speed.
Ideally, you want that? Yeah, ideally a right footer and a left footer, one who mops up everything in the air, is very strong and accomplished in the air, and one who's a very good reader of the game. So we had an ideal combination, Foster and Donaghy. I've moved Donaghy to left back. So that in my team, in this imaginary team, I've got 2 right footers, and the next one I'm coming to is another right footer. And he's a Scot, and I'll say that he was as brave as a lion, as quick as a cheetah, and won most of his medals in Scotland.
So did he go on to be a manager as well?
He managed for a brief time in Scotland, yes. I think he now lives in a country called the United States.
Yes, and I think he won most of his stuff at Rangers, if I've gotten the right side of Glasgow. Yeah.
Very good, Andrew, yeah.
Go on, Andrew.
Richard Gough.
Good, Andrew. Yeah, spot on.
You got him from Spurs, did you? So he was one of your first signings, is that right?
He was indeed. He came from Dundee. I had a job to get him. It was a lot of money, and we doubled our money in 15 months. He wanted to go back to Scotland. He told me, maybe slightly unfairly, had a domestic problem. Had to get back to Scotland. Glasgow Rangers went round the back door, and because Dundee would never sell to, Dundee had a great manager called Jim McLean. They would never sell to Rangers, never sell to a Scottish rival. And he kept those players under lock and key, Jim McLean. And Jim McLean, I managed to sign him. He was so athletic, so quick. He was only at Tottenham 15 months, but he was a hero. He was a real, a buccaneer of a centre-half, a bit of a wild Indian at times. Chased the ball, completely the reverse of Foster. But he was a very accomplished player, Scottish international. And he wanted to go back to Scotland, and we agreed a price. We doubled our money in 15 months. We got nearly £2 million for him. I wish he hadn't gone. At the time we signed him, I was in for Butcher as well. And it was ironic. Butcher went to Glasgow Rangers, and Gough joined him a year later. And I think he won 9 consecutive championship medals in Scotland. I used to say to him, come back to England, challenge yourself. And in his heyday, his swan song, he did come back to England. He played very briefly at Everton and Forest. And then I think he settled in America. I speak to him from time to time, Richard Gough. He used to speak to Walter Smith and myself if he ever wanted advice. I hope we gave him good advice. But he was a top centre-back. So there's your back 4, Petrescu, Foster, Gough and Donaghy.
Excellent.
Wow.
Okay, before we go there, I mean, I think most players and coaches or managers alike who know you know what research you did going into players. I mean, your knowledge of players was like ridiculous. It's off the chart. Do you feel
Yeah,
that
it was ridiculous and exaggerated, Marvin.
but in today's game, Gaffer, though, I mean, if you was managing, like, for instance, let's take Pep Guardiola, he's not going to be doing the stuff looking at players. He has to rely on other people of his staff to do that. Do you think would that have taken a little bit away from you as a manager today? Because I know how much you love going to games.
It's changed. In those days, we used to be out watching players all the time. We used to have our contacts. We used to follow them up. I did wonderfully well for a man called Cyril Beach, who brought me Welsh players, wonderful Welsh players like Hartson, Pembridge, Kerry Hughes, Jason Rees, Kurt Nogan. All came from a little guy. Well, he was an ex-pro at Swansea called Cyril Beach. Wonderful guy, now passed away. And so I had scouts. I had a man called Dave Gibbons in the Midlands who sent me up Frankie Bunn, Cole, Michael Small. So we had scouts. We even had a scout, I think, in a place called Aylesbury or Leighton Buzzard that found a lad called Marvin Johnson. I don't know if you remember him.
Fantastic, Phil. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause it there, and then when we come back from our break, we will continue on with David's Pleat's My Best 11.
Add some art to your Adidas. From your favourite football team to the bands you've always loved. Some things are meant to be celebrated. Share your passion with the world and stand out from the crowd with custom-designed Adidas trainers by Dazzler's Craft. Choose from one of the most popular costume designs or create your own look and use a bespoke design service. dazzlerscraft.co.uk. Adding art to your Adidas.
Welcome back to the second part of David Pleat's My Best 11. We're going to launch straight into Marv's 60 seconds, where Marv will have 60 seconds to fire as many questions as he can to David, and David will answer them as quick as he can. We don't need why, just whatever comes into your head straight away. Over to you, Marv.
Okay, Gaffer, best ground or football stadium you ever managed at?
Very difficult. I have been to Barcelona for a pre-season tournament. I have managed at Wembley and I've managed at Liverpool. I think Liverpool, the singing before the game, definitely hairs on the back of your neck. So
okay,
I'm going to say Liverpool, but I have to say present Tottenham Stadium. Absolutely fantastic.
Favourite other sport other than football?
Football.
Okay. If you could change, here's a good one. I think this would be a good answer. If you could change one rule in today's game, what would it be?
Yeah. I think I'd move the technical areas further away from each other and make them further apart.
Okay. Messi or Ronaldo?
I have to go for Messi because I think that he's brave, he's quick, he can dribble, he can head, he can do everything for a small man. I'd go for Messi. I think Messi has been incredible. I think Ronaldo is a credit to himself and his dedication, but I'd go for Messi in the current players.
Yep. Funniest player you ever managed, you've come across? Funniest player, in your opinion?
Well, David Moss, an outside left at Luton, had a wonderful, droll sense of humour.
Okay.
I have met many comedians. I've met many comedians, real life, as well as on the football field. Eric Morecambe at Luton was a lovely, lovely man who was a director who I got quite close to at Luton. But a lot of footballers are jokers, they're funny guys, they make you laugh. You need them. You need that camaraderie in a club. But I'm going to go for David Moss because he was kind of a wit, sarcastic wit perhaps at times. But Mossy was funny.
Okay, last one is Andrew?
Yep, last one.
Okay. If you could manage any club, which club would that have been?
Oh, dear. I was lucky. Luton and Tottenham. They were my clubs. Luton and Tottenham. I don't know another club.
Right.
Luton and Tottenham. I don't look.
Excellent.
I would never look beyond that. Never look beyond that.
Are they still the two clubs you look for on a Saturday? Oh, say Saturday, but you know what I mean?
Well, luckily enough, I am still working. I'm still a consultant at Tottenham. So Tottenham means everything to me at the moment. I'm still enjoy watching Luton and wanting them to do well, but Tottenham consumes my time at the moment.
Fantastic. So you mentioned a new ground. You reckon it's the best ground in the world at the moment. What makes you say that?
Of the grounds I've been to, certainly it's the best stadium in the world. Yes.
Yeah. What makes you say that? What is it they've done? What do you think is it playing? So you're talking from a player or a manager or a fan or
everything? Playing service, the panels that come into the American football, the bars, the 20-odd restaurants, the boxes. It's the most plushest area. It's just a wonderful viewing stadium. Behind the goal to the right hand side, which is the Paxton Road, incredible height. It's like Bayern. I can describe it as similar to Dortmund and Bayern Munich. Great atmospheres. It really is a wonderful stadium, wonderful, and all the gizmos, the gadgets, if you like. They sell beer now where the beer is filled up from underneath the glass. I don't know how they do that, but that's what they do. And the pint of beer gets filled up in 2 seconds. I don't know much about technology.
Fantastic. So far you've named a back four, and we're going to move on to midfield. And I'll leave it to you where you want to start. Obviously, you've got.
I've selected 3 midfield players for different reasons. The first one is a player who was clinical, clean-cut, Scottish. Had to sell him and won a league championship medal at Leeds United.
You got it, Andrew?
Yeah.
You have?
Yes.
I haven't.
He played at Liverpool and won the Europa, whatever it was called, in 2000. It's 2001 where they won the treble. He was there.
Well done, Andrew. Big season for Liverpool with Julio. Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. Spot on.
He played for Leeds.
Yes.
And you'd have played with him. You'd have managed him at Leicester.
Correct. He's a top man.
Yes.
Sold him once again under pressure. Agreed with him that he could go at the end of that season. I'd already sold, unfortunately, Russell Osman, who was my quality centre half. Newell wanted to go as a consequence of McAllister going. The team just dissolved. Lost my 3 best players, and they went to Howard Wilkinson. Changed the way Leeds played. They were a very direct team. Him and Strachan changed the way they played. And he won the medal in, I think it was the very first year of the Premiership at Leeds United. And of course he went on to Liverpool and Coventry, had a spell as a manager, top class person, currently assistant to Gerrard at Glasgow Rangers.
That's where he is. Yeah, I remember. I was wondering where I saw him the other day. Yeah, because Gerrard had COVID, didn't he? So he had to take on the Europa and the Old Firm, didn't he, last weekend? Yes.
Yes. So he'd be one of my creative midfield players.
So when you said you obviously you got rid of Strachan left. Strachan. You got him in my mind. Sorry, McAllister left. What do you do in that situation? Do you go out and try and find a ready replacement? Do you want to bring a youth player in, or is it dependent on the expectations of the club?
No, the club were very happy with me because I was getting them in pounds, but not points. They were happy. No, we couldn't find any. I tried to replace him with a lad called Billy Davis from Scotland. He was a little midfield player. I gave him the number 10 shirt. It was the worst thing I ever did because they compared him with McAllister. And that's a mistake that I learnt. It didn't work out. I did the same thing at Tottenham, replaced a very good player with Johnny Method, top player, and with the same number, and that didn't work. So give him a different role. It's like Tottenham now replacing Harry Kane and trying to find a number 9. Maybe if they do replace Harry Kane eventually, which they will, give the player another number. Not the same. Harry wears 10, so you wouldn't give him you mustn't. How can I put it? You mustn't try and replicate something. You must try and change something. Maybe we perhaps change the way we played. Perhaps we should have been more direct. We played through McAllister, through the midfield. Anyway, McAllister's a top player, a top professional, dressed smartly. Nearly sold him to Forest, met Brian Clough. And unfortunately, Brian was late for the meeting, and I don't know, Gary came back and said, I won't be signing for Forest. And he went to Leeds with Howard Wilkinson.
Wow. And the rest is history. So, next to Gary McAllister.
The centre midfield player is a man called Nobby. Captain, courageous, a leader, top man. He did 1,000 games as a manager, did 1,000 games as a player. And now, like myself, he's only just semi-retired.
Brian Horton.
Correct. Absolutely. A top man, a top captain, someone I confided in as a captain. Very close to the players, but very close to me. The players respected him. He tells me a great story about a player called Mark Hazelwood, who when Horton was in the treatment room, and so was Hazelwood, and there was a phone call to the physio called John Sheridan. And the phone call was from me in the office, and it said, can you send Brian Horton up? Right? So Hazelwood heard this, and Hazelwood said evidently, oh, you're going up to pick the team again, are you? So Horton replied to him, yes, and you won't be in it. They trusted him. He was absolutely top man, top professional. Cannot speak highly enough of him. Came to Luton from Brighton in exchange for a guy called Tony Grealish, Paddy, and Horton with it, well, through the glory years, really, absolutely. And I recommended him as a manager to Don Robinson, chairman of Hull at the time. It was at a dinner in London, and Jack Charlton came over to me, said, the chairman of Hull would like to speak to you. I went over to his table. Jack was on his table, Don Robinson, and he said to me very clearly, tell me about the boy Horton. Would he be capable of managing our club? And I said, Mr. Robinson, you'll be able to sleep easy at night. He went on to manage Hull and several other clubs, including Manchester City. Loved the game, finished at lower leagues at Macclesfield, Southend, and is now in semi-retirement, watches Manchester City play. Top man, leader.
I mean, I've been quite a few, obviously, ex-players on here, Gaffer, and they spoke about his qualities, and one of the things that stood out, which was consistent with a lot of them, mentioned about the Brian Horton glare. He had this stare where he used to, like, if you did something wrong, he didn't have to say nothing. But I mean, Rob Johnson, like, mentioned it really perfectly. He said, like, Marv, I could just feel these eyes glaring at me without him saying when, and I look at him and he'll have this stare. He'll be just staring at me.
Brilliant, Marvin. Absolutely brilliant story. I mean, my worry was when he used to stare at the referees. That was the worry.
Fantastic. So you're very well known at Luton and other clubs as well for bringing youth team players through, Marv being one of them. Obviously, helping them come through and nurturing them through the youth teams. Was that something that you always set out to do? Is that a real thing that you wanted to do, or is it more of a necessity?
It's a very good question, Andrew, that. Brilliant. It's a near necessity because at Luton we had limited resources. So it was great for me because I had, in a way, although I didn't realise it at the time, no option. We couldn't use a transfer market in those early days. We had to produce our own. We had to spot the Steens and the Ricky Hills, which I was very, do take credit for. And the Donegies, 5,000, Steen, Hill, wherever you look, Moss. But it was the young players too. Ray Daniel, Gary Parker, Tim Breaker, Mitchell Thomas. It was probably out of necessity. And my greatest gripe with these lower league teams now in England, Division 1 and 2, they will not bring young players into the team. They continually, at the end of every season, let their old sweats go, contracts expired, and bring in more old sweats from other clubs. Recipe for disaster. The only way to manage a lower league team is to say to the chairman quite clearly at the start, I'm going to push in one or two youth players every season and give them a real opportunity. And if they get better, which they will be able to give you a chance of selling him. and maintain and getting enough money to help survive the club over the next couple of years. They don't do it. Only Crewe Alexander has followed a policy over the years, and now not so much at Crewe. But you knew whenever you watch Crewe, you could watch young players. You can watch other teams, and you see hardy ex-professionals. Good luck to them. They're getting a living, and I admire them. They love the game, but you have to bring young players through. It's an absolute necessity.
Yeah. Did it give you a lot of pride when you saw some of these players come through as well? I know you say necessity, but also surely there must be as a coach in you.
Massive pride to see Hill get picked for England, Harford get picked for England, Steen get picked for England, Donaghy regular for Ireland, Grealish Republic of Ireland. I mean, Hazelwood Wales. I mean, you can imagine when I sit and reflect. Massive pride, I can assure you. And further pride when these players, after finishing football, went into coaching like Marvin and management. A lot of them. And I always think maybe they learned something from me. And of course, I've forgotten one of the most heroic players of all time at Luton, Radimir Antic. A wonderful, wonderful person, a wonderful family, an inspirational player, and someone I looked up to. Quite frankly, I looked up to. He was such a gentleman. He was such a fine man. I could not necessarily have seen him going into coaching. In 1996 or 95, he got the double with Atletico Madrid. He won the Cup and the League. Can you imagine what a feat that was for Atletico Madrid in those years to beat Barcelona and Real Madrid? And of course, later on, he went to manage both Barcelona and Real Madrid. He was one of my heroes as a player. Wonderful, wonderful player. One incredible signing from Saragossa. I was a lucky man. I got Radi Antic to Luton, and sadly, in the last year, he passed away. Incredible. Oh, what a gentleman. I have to mention Radi Antic.
Right. You mentioned that you hope that some of the players you've coached and managed, you had an influence on you. You definitely had an influence on me, Gaffer, while I'm here in America, and from when I started coaching, because I mean, it was what I call the Luton way: the ball on the ground, pass and move. I can't understand sometimes. I mean, obviously, there's managers who need results, so obviously from back to front to go direct, it's just not enjoyable for me. And then even now when I coaching the girls and boys, it's like if we get beat and it's a case where we play team off the park, I go home. I know obviously the parents and everyone's like, oh, we lost. But I know I enjoy the game. If we win a game, it's like back to front. There's a big hoop at the end, and it's like I've not enjoyed that as much. It's hard to explain. I just don't.
No, you can't explain it. There's no greater pleasure than winning and playing well.
Yeah.
I get disappointed sometimes. We could win, but if we hadn't played well, I was strange. I was a bit odd, perhaps. I didn't think that winning was the be-all and end-all. The game, playing well, moving well, playing off the ball, people moving, looking for angles, passing angles. That was football. It's a game of beauty. I want to win. But in the end, that type of football will win more games than it loses. And that's the point, to encourage players to play properly, to play well. If we all played the direct game, my argument against Watford Football Club and Graham Taylor, it's not an argument because we all have a philosophy, but if everyone played that way, the game would go to the wall because it's not a spectacle. It's not clever. It's fine if you play that type of game against a team that plays consecutive passes. Fine, and it's up to your philosophy to beat that philosophy. But my argument was a lot of short-termism on that way of playing, that Warnock, Graham Taylor, I can tell you a few people, Porterfield years ago, there were certain people that played that way, and they did quite well for a short period and then moved on to other clubs on the back of the success. But we could play against the long ball team, but the beauty of the game is like a ballet. It's like playing for enjoyment, lots of touches, lots of creativity. Create. It's a game of beauty, football.
I agree. Totally agree.
Definitely. So who's going next to Brian and Gary?
Well, it's a man called, I'm not going to tell you his name, but he could put a ball on a sixpence. He could play with both feet. And he eventually went abroad. So
did he go to Monaco?
Yes, he did indeed. Well done. Brilliant. He went to Monaco. We agreed to go to Saint-Etienne with Gerard Houllier, but in the last minute, the agent, who's now passed away, manoeuvred him to Monaco. But Glenn Hoddle was an interesting character. I shan't go into it too much. He was, in a strange way, people were in awe of Glenn. And of course, he became the manager when I was director of football. And we had a far better relationship towards the end of this period. Probably when he was struggling more, he kind of confided in me more. But he was very independent. But as a player, he could play a crossfield ball, he could play the short ball, he could play he had all the things they call it in the irons in your locker, that type of thing. He had all the clubs in his locker. He could do anything with a ball. He was a tall, 6'1", Hoddle, definitely. But for one so tall to be so skillful on the ball, great credit to him. He was a fine player, of course, a very fine player, and he's still considered the legend of White Hart Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say he's probably arguably the best, like, technical or creative player you've managed, Gaffer?
No, that's difficult. Antique was good. Ricky Hill was good. Difficult to say. Marvin, I always steer clear of that best because you try to define it as the best creative.
Right.
But often people ask me who was the best player you ever managed or played with or whatever. And I say the best at what? Because everyone's got a different attribute. Everyone's got a different skill. Hoddle probably was the best long passer. He was probably the cleverest short passer. So, in terms of, was he the hardest working player? No. Could he do his defensive duties well? No. I've had good players. I mean, I mentioned McAllister. I mentioned, you could talk Ricky Hill. John Sheridan was very clever at Sheffield Wednesday, but his legs had gone. He couldn't run, so I couldn't play him enough.
You had Chris Waddle at Sheffield Wednesday as well. Was he there then?
Yeah, we're concentrating on the midfield at the moment. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Can I just ask another question, David? Did you ever get an opportunity? You mentioned Monaco. Did you ever get an opportunity to manage abroad, and would it have interested you?
Yes, indeed. I went to speak to Olympiakos in Piraeus in Greece and decided it wasn't for me. People said you should get your termination money before you start when you manage in Greece. Because they, unfortunately, were unreliable. And the man that took the job at Olympiakos, he was a Dutchman, Lebriks. He got the sack within about 3 months. So I made a wise decision there, plus the fact there was about 22 men in a room full of smoke, giving me, questioning me. Now, I don't mind being questioned from 2 men in America, but I didn't fancy 20 Greeks telling me how I should run the club in Greece. I didn't think I would be able to cope with that. So I turned that, I pulled away from that one. And then later on, the journalist rang me from from Spain, thinking I could speak Spanish fluently because I visited Spain from time to time. And I told him I couldn't. But I think I would have had a chance to, yes, he said I could have gone to Spain. I would definitely have been considered for the job. I think it was, I'm not quite sure whether it was Atletico or Seville, but it was a decent club. But it didn't come to pass. And maybe I wasn't brave enough to take an opportunity abroad. But I say to people now who are coaching, learn Spanish, learn another language, because you don't know what opportunities develop abroad. And that's why I admire anyone who's been involved in football, who's gone to other lands to not just progress their career, but use their skills and information to impart on others.
Yeah, especially in non-English speaking countries as well. No, I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. Yeah,
definitely. So there's your 3 midfields. Yeah, up front, or how are you playing them? Are you playing one centre and 2? Are you playing the England way they play at the moment?
Yeah, the modern idiom. Yeah, 2 wide. Anyway, the one on the right is a Geordie who could turn a tin can inside out.
I think I may have said him already.
Yeah.
No, 10
I
out of 10.
didn't mean to spoil it.
I could have given you an Italian who knew where the goals were, was a great skillful player, but he hit a referee and made his mark at West Ham. But I was the one that signed him from Glasgow Celtic for Sheffield Wednesday, Di Canio. But he was an abrasive character, could be brilliant, could be lazy, but when he was brilliant, he was super brilliant. But I'll go for Waddle because I had him at Tottenham and Sheffield Wednesday, and he's a nice guy, family guy, good feet, right and left foot, and very skillful. He wanted to play off the front at Tottenham in my 5-man midfield. I said he couldn't. Hoddle's got to stay there. You've got to stay wide. He didn't enjoy it, but he was great at it. And eventually he got his wish. He played off the front, and of course he went to play with Papin and other great players in Marseille. Yep. Chris Waddle would be my outside right as such. Yep. Very difficult up front because there were so many people. Brian Steen should get in any team really, because Brian Steen is a wonderful, wonderful player. In fact, I put him right at the top of players. I took him from Edgware Town, and he was fantastic. He got so much pride when he played for England. I thought the world of Brian Steen. I thought he was a fantastic player. And really he should be in the team, but as the main front man, it was very difficult. I had Mick Harford, took him from Birmingham City Reserves, and I think in December '84 he's just put a picture on his website or something. He's not so well at the moment. He's having some treatment, and he put a picture on his website. The best day I ever had, and it was his photo of a young-looking me with him signing for Luton. That was the day when Luton got their jewel, because he's been great for Luton. Mick Harford. I've had other centre forwards. Mike Newell, run all day, signed from Wigan for next to nothing for Luton. But anyway, that's not my centre forward. The man leading the line just knew how to hit the net. He almost got to 50.
Oh, he's got are they a famous family? Cousins and stuff in football.
Other than Marvin, Bradley. Bradley. Yeah, Bradley's now coaching at Luton. Paul Allen is working for the FA. Martin Allen is an ambassador at West Ham. And Oliver, that's the son of Clive, is a stockbroker. So there you are. And there's the family.
So Clive Allen.
Goal scorer. Just knew where the goals were. First game for Tottenham, I had him. He got a hat-trick at the Villa. First game. And he went on and on and on. 49 goals. He wasn't the bravest. He wasn't the quickest. He wasn't the strongest. He knew where the goals were.
Yeah.
He had an amazing ability. He knew where those posts were, and he trained hard. Every Friday, I used to take him out, and he used to hit 20 volleys into a small, tiny goal on a Friday before the game. Clive Allen, just goals, scored goals, whether it was Arsenal briefly a month, QPR. Wherever he went, he scored goals. He was a natural goal scorer. Wasn't the tallest, and as I say, he was a phenomenon really, because you usually say about a goal scorer, what was his outstanding quality? Was he ever quick? Was he ever brave? Was he ever brilliant in the air? What was he good at? Clive Allen just scored goals. Scored goals.
Oh, definitely. And do you think that he's given? Obviously, I'm not a Spurs fan. Marv isn't. Obviously, you're very close to Spurs. Is he given the accolades by Spurs that you think he deserves?
I think so, yes. I think though he worked as a coach there, and then one or two things happened, and he left that coaching role. He was doing now some summarising on French football or what have you. But Clive's fine. He used to go to the beIN Sports at Qatar, Doha, and do quite a little bit for them. But no, Clive's fine. I think he was given the credit. I mean, his goals record is fantastic. Whether Harry Kane can ever get 49 goals in a season, I don't know. let's hope it's this season.
Definitely. So Clive Allen being fed by Chris Waddle, and who else is feeding Clive Allen?
Yeah, a two-footed scorer, a maker and taker of goals, a bargain from Wiltshire.
Have you got it, Marv?
I wanted to give you a hard one.
I think I've got it. I mean, I don't know if he was from Wiltshire. He played at Luton, yes?
Yes, brilliant, Marvin. You've got it. I think Swindon's in Wiltshire, isn't it, Marvin? Or am I, my geography getting worse?
Swindon is, yeah.
Yeah, Swindon is, yeah. But like he's currently working for Liverpool. Is he scouting for Liverpool? Is he?
No, he's retired. Moss is retired.
Oh, he's retired now.
Yeah, definitely retired. Top class lad. Fantastic. For me, terrific winger. And he came from Swindon, which is in Wiltshire, Marvin.
Yes, correct. We spoke about.
I'll send you a map if you give me a.
But we spoke about like I think it was Wayne Turner we had on. He said, "Have you got it, Andrew?" Andrew, you know who it is? Andrew?
I'm sure it's Mossy?
Yeah.
I think it was Mossy. Yeah.
We were talking about players like David Moss, who was. I mean, he's a little bit before my time when I got into Luton as an apprentice, but the ability and the quality of his crosses and stuff, that he never got like a cap like a Brian Steen or a Paul Walsh or Mick Harford or anything like that.
What he had was, like Hoddle actually, and like Antiques to a certain extent, they were my two-footed players. He could cross a ball right foot, left foot unerringly. And he'd cross that early ball, and it was always accurate. But more than that, he could score. He scored a goal at Preston when very early days, when I needed a result badly, actually. I think we had 2 games to go, Preston and Fulham. And we drew at Preston 2-2, and the great Tom Finney was in the boardroom afterwards, and I went up to the boardroom, and Tom Finney said to me, "I like the look of your outside left." And I told Mossy that, and it meant so much to David Moss. I remember he scored a goal at Liverpool. Wonderful. When we were under the collar, because it was a great day for Luton. We had 3 goalkeepers and we still drew 3-3. It was one of the greatest games in our history, in my opinion. Steen and Walsh ran Lawrenson and Hansen silly. And when I see Mark Lawrence, I always remind him of that game where we were absolutely fantastic. The following year, they got their own back. They beat us 6-0. But that game was fantastic. And David Moss scored a chip. He was very good at chipping the ball. He was magnificent. He was a top player, Mossy. A terrific player. Penalties, never missed.
Yeah.
Never missed a penalty.
Yeah.
But he was two-footed. And that's skillful in itself, to be able to strike a ball with both feet accurately.
Yeah, and as Marv said, why do you know why, or do you know kind of reasons? Was it just there was Waddle and people like that in front of him that stopped him from getting the England cap? Do you think?
No, Mossy at the time. I mean, we'd gone into the first division in the top division, but we weren't a glamorous club. You know, we were still in ramshackle Kenilworth Road, and we weren't really at the top table. We were, but we weren't. If you follow what I mean, we were Little Luton. And we enjoyed that, if you're not, I know it says stigma, that label. And so in adversity, we would fight the big boys. We had the sign over Arsenal. We would beat Arsenal. We had a great record against the Arsenal. By the same situation, we had a poor record against Everton. They were my nemesis, Everton. But, listen, fantastic days, fantastic players, and great memories. There's so many players here we haven't mentioned.
I was going to say, what are your honourable mentions? You can reel them off now, David.
The research for this took me 25 weeks, incidentally. It's so difficult to name an 11.
Are there any honourable mentions you want to make, or? Have you mentioned them all as you went? Yes.
So many.
Gary Abbott, Walshy. Walshy was to have a signing. No, there's so many really. Ardiles was quite interesting at Tottenham. Very educated guy. Players at Luton. They played chess on a Friday night. The players at Tottenham, about 7 of them, they were educated boys. They played chess, and they played like that. I mean, it was just quality. But no, I enjoyed it, and who else? There's so many. I can't.
Yeah.
Honourable mentions to everyone. I'm going to give an honourable mention to a young left centre back as well.
Who's that, David? Who do you want to give an honourable mention
to? Johnson.
Thank you, Gaffer. Thank you.
It was making his way and got through the competition. It wasn't easy to be a professional. I always remember Marvin. Wonderful parents, came to watch you play, very supportive, not busy on the touchline. You had top class parents. I'm going to tell you that. Thank you. And that's very important. Players' background, very important. Very important.
Yeah. I think you mentioned a few times about competitions and things like that, Blair Wits and stuff like that. Is that right, Marv?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my biggest memories, Gaffer. I mean, I think if most players who've come through youth teams would talk about their youth days, and I mean, speak fondly about obviously going to Holland, the Blauw-Wit tournament, and how it sort of like, made the experience even greater, even better. That was one of the things which, when I actually went into the Luton staff as a academy coach, that straight away I thought I want to bring in some sort of trip for the youth team players to go, and we ended up going to Stuttgart because that was a bit. And again, you came out regularly to those, and that again, that's something which is so rare. And yourself and Brian Clough would come out because obviously Forrest would go there as well and watch the youth team.
I remember Clough. I remember meeting. Yeah, Clough was out there. That's right. I remember him asking me what did you fly out on? I said, an aeroplane. And he said, well, yeah, but what kind of aeroplane? I said, I don't know. All I know is it was an aeroplane. He wanted to know whether it was a BC-4 or whatever they were in those days. I don't know. But Clough was an intriguing character, a very intelligent man, very brash, very opinionated, but in many ways wonderful to listen to. And he believed football should be played on the deck, and if it was meant to be played in the sky, then they kicked the ball in the air. And he had good principles of play, good principles. But of course he was very, what's the word? Maybe, have you got a word for him, Marvin?
Eccentric?
To a certain extent, eccentric, yeah.
Holland was
controversial.
Controversial, yes. That would be probably, the best word to describe him. Normally, when we have ex-players on, we say, which manager would you have managed this 11? But I've got an interesting question for you now, knowing you now as David Pleat, as who's had all those years as a manager. What advice would you give a young David Pleat at the age of 28 now, coming into the game to manage in today's game now, knowing what you already know about the game?
Be yourself. Stick to your principles. It's not easy because certainly if you lose a game or a couple of games, it's very easy to bend. It's very easy to change your philosophy. And to count to 10. Harry Haslam taught me many rather silly things. He was a joker. Every time he spoke to you, it was interspersed with jokes. By the time you finished talking for 20 minutes, you couldn't remember about 100 jokes he told you. But some of the things he said was very resonant. Count to 10 slowly. Wolves have ears. Two's company, three's a crowd. And then, of course, the funniest one of all, win, lose or draw. Always tell the president or the chairman's wife she looks lovely after the game. That's important, he said.
Fantastic. So, I know you're still doing some media work at the moment, and also you're working for Tottenham. Do you want to just give us a bit of an overview of what you're up to these days and what your work entails at Tottenham?
Now, ageism, media work's gone. I write the occasional column. I'm writing a book, which will come out eventually when I finish. I'm not finished yet. I'm watching 2 or 3 games a week. I'm looking at the youngsters all the time and making comments from time to time on their progress or lack of progress. So I'm a sounding board for the academy coaches, of which there are many in the academy system. And I'm quite close to the innermost, well, not the innermost sanctum, but you could say the inner sanctum. So I think that they still respect my views. So at the moment, it's quite easily coped with. I watch various games at different levels, seniors, academies particularly, and 1 and 2, divisions 1 and 2. I was particularly, I get great credit, which I think I deserve, for getting the boy out of Milton Keynes, which was a straightforward one because I went to Milton Keynes on several occasions. I saw this 16-year-old boy. It was a no-brainer, but it took them a while to get the thing done for £5 million. And had a bad season last year because Mourinho didn't fancy him. But I've got faith in him still, and he's back in the team now. But that's just one of the things. I'm looking for a jewel. I'm looking for a diamond. It's very hard to find. Very hard to find. The lower league teams aren't putting youngsters in, as I've said earlier on. So you're looking beneath the first team at times. You're having to look at if they've got a 15 or 16-year-old emerging in their reserves. And if you want an academy player from another Academy A club, it's quite a cost. And you can't deal in that market. So you have to look at the academy teams like, who shall I say, in the lower echelon, Ipswich, Bristol, Cardiff, those clubs, not the big clubs in the Premiership.
Right.
And you can seduce, bad word that, an academy player, a youngster from that, with a transfer fee. But no, it's a very interesting, and let's put it like, I'm still enjoying it, Marvin.
That's great, Gaffer. And listen, I want to, on behalf of Andrew and myself, thank you ever so much to coming on and being in the position of, I know a manager is difficult as it is, but for us to put you on the spot and for you just to give 11 names in what was a illustrious career that you had as a manager would have been very, very difficult. So I appreciate that.
You haven't asked me who would referee the game. Are we going to play a game with this team? What do you call it? Reality game?
We can. Who's on?
Can we put them against another team in one of these games they play nowadays on the screen? Can we put this team together against another team in a tournament match?
That has been mentioned actually by a few of the guests. I mean, Wayne. I think Wayne would have a big argument because with his team because he comments about you sort of like started this lazy left, and he had his system where you made it work, and he used it a lot in his days as a coach. So I mean, there'd be a lot of arguments about whose team would be better, Gaffer.
Marvin, you made a very good point, which I can just probably conclude on. Well, I had a player called Wayne Turner who came from school. Now, Wayne Turner doesn't get into any top teams. He was just an absolutely solid club player, which every team needs. You look at the strength of any club and you look at the underbelly. Wayne Turner would play for me in any position. He now ruefully says at times, if there was going to be a substitution, he always knew it was him. But let me tell you, I really valued that type of person and that type of player. Fitness fanatic, family man, Luton born and bred. I can't speak highly enough of Wayne Turner, but maybe the team is so good that we've selected today, I should make him sub again for this team.
He'll love that.
He will love listening to that. And on that note, I want to say on behalf of my best 11, thank you so much for your time, David. And that was David Pleat's My Best 11.